name is Brian again from Menit Farms Limited. Um, Today we have come here to do an evaluation for Eden Heritage. I wanted to discuss a few points when you're planning for your farm. It's a whole lot of things that you need to put in place, especially looking at the factors of production, looking at any enabling factors to ensure that you have um, uh, those components, those items that are going to make sure the farms thrive. So when we came here, we were very much looking at what are those factors that are going to help us, what are the issues, challenges, so that we draw something that is going to help. Because this farmer was interested or is interested to create a commercial farm. So it was important for us to think through how the farm is going to be managed as a one point, but also assess the existing factors of production and any enabling factors that we can introduce on this farm. Um, Above that, at the back of our minds, we'll pose the question to the farmer and try to jointly discuss, looking at how will the farm break even. With this question, it basically led us to making sure that we go very specific and look at the economics, the agricultural economics behind the establishment, but also trying to project ourselves into a period whereby we are able to say this farm is self-sustaining, this farm is able to run on its own without necessarily having to pull all the money all the time. I want to pay the workers, want to buy this and that, supplements, feeds. So we are 1 year into this journey, and we are projecting this farm to break even after the third year, meaning that this particular farmer at Eden Heritage will have recovered the investment, and the farm will be running on its own on the profits generated from this farm. So this is the reason I wanted to discuss one of the tools that we are using. We used what we call a cost analysis sheet. We do this process tailored to different farmers and dependent on different contexts where we work from. So the way the cost analysis works, it has different parts and variables. So variables is more of items that will be used to determine different observations on the farm. Either is the cost or the revenue or the profit, the loss, and so on. So the first sort of part is basically to look at the stocking, a projection on how many numbers of animals are going to be stocked. So once we input the numbers of the animals that are going to be stocked, it automatically gives you estimates in terms of how the multiplication is going to happen, on how the different breed lines are going to move towards maturity and expansion. So the second part will basically show you, after the assessment, we include different cost-related items to establish the farm or to rejuvenate the farm. So for instance, after looking at the factors of production, land, so we want to see what was the cost of the land, what is the cost of of the animal structure, what's the cost of any establishment, water, irrigation, pasture, and so on, including buying of the animals themselves. So we put all these related costs, and then we categorize what the fixed costs are, what our variable costs are. So those that are variable, we include them in our recurring years to make sure that we are cognizant of those costs that are recurrent year in, year out, towards the break-even point. As you can see on this sheet, we have 1 year treated as the year of investment with all the different costs items. We have the second year only picking up the variable costs or recurring costs, and then the third year as well picking up the variable costs in that order. So in this sense, you are able to know, to have an idea based on the number of animals you want to start with. So for instance, if it is maybe stocking a minimum of 60 animals, so it's going to give you, depending on the prevailing market, the 60 animals as the opening stock, they're going to give you a picture of related costs that are involved to make sure that you develop the herd. You multiply the numbers to the break-even point. So in terms of the feed, in terms of the variable costs and the fixed costs that I explained earlier on, it's going to give you a clear picture so that you make a decision depending on your readiness, on your revenue streams, on how the resources are available for you to establish the farm. So it's a very, very, very interesting and key decision tool whereby you look at the different cost items and then you make a decision what to pause, what to prioritize, what to put on the farm and what not to put on the farm, but without compromising the standard practices, the technically accepted practices. So once we have that costing and tagging different costs related to that particular context, because all the cost values are picked from those contexts. So if we have maybe a farm being established in the central part of the country here in Uganda, we use the prevailing costs related values for those items that are in that particular region. Or if we want to establish a farm in another country, for instance, outside of Uganda, we use knowledge about the prevailing prices and costs for those particular items in those contexts. So it doesn't, it's not static, it doesn't really matter you are, so we see it and look at the prevailing prices and then put together a cost sheet of the items that have been identified as needed to be on the farm to factor the production and ensure that they're enabling the production on your farm. So once we do that, that's the decision-making process, decision-making sheet. It also feeds into another part in another sheet, which is mainly the multiplication sheet. It also has a spread over the different periods of time, and for this case, 3 years. So if you started with 60 animals, what do we expect after the 6 months? What numbers do we expect, and going forward after a year, after 2 years, and so on. Uniquely, because planning takes a lot of different factors, in some cases it may not be perfect. So that's why on our cost analysis, when we are looking at the multiplication, we use the minimum values, the minimum numbers. What do I mean by minimum numbers? So we use the, if all factors are constant, the worst case scenario, something that you should have, whether you have challenges on the farm or whether the farm is full running. So we use this minimum estimates and values and numbers because we don't want to don't want to be over ambitious in over projecting and yet it may be affected by different external environments. So in addition to the minimum numbers, we also use assumptions. But first of all, just to explain the minimum. So if there are 60 animals that you have stocked on the farm, we expect on the minimum at least each female goat out of those 60 animals to give birth to at least one kid. Okay, but we know it can give birth to more than one if they're well fed, if it's a good breed line, and so on. So we want to use this minimum number so that we are able to be very specific, very much exact, and to have numbers that are more reliable when we are doing the planning process. So in that planning sheet and multiplication sheet, it also has considerations for different breeds. So looking at the F1, that is the first generation breed type, as a result of crossing either a superior breed with a local breed, and the second generation, which is F2, as a result of crossing the offspring from F1, and so on. So it goes on, detailing the different breeds that we should expect if we have that controlled breeding in nature. So besides that, as I mentioned, the assumptions we make is to ensure that we have 10% mortality rate, which is agreeable globally. If you maintain 10% mortality on the farm, it shows your farm is fairly doing great. If it is beyond that, then that's a problem. So all the work we do is to ensure that we have direction towards maintaining that below 10% mortality rates on the farm. The other assumption is we assume that it's going to be at least 90% pregnancy rates, meaning that at least 90% of all the does on the farm should get pregnant. Of course, all of them can get pregnant, but I want to make sure that we are maintaining the minimum standard and making that assumption. On the feeding as well, we want to make sure that we have precision in the feeding and able to manage the nutrition and the satisfaction of the animals. That's why at least each adult goat should feed on 3 bells, for instance, for a period of 10 days as an assumption. So even when we are planning the feeds, we make sure that the workers on the farm are able to manage that kind of approach. So we do all different feed rations depending on each feed on the ground, including the supplementation, because we recently introduced the pellets for different categories of the animals. We have lactating mothers, we have pellets for kids, pellets for general herd, and pellets for a specific special needs animal. So all these are factored into as assumption. The other assumption that we make is on the productivity, on extra products, byproducts. For example, we know at least each adult goat should give us at least 138 kilograms of manure by the end of each year. So with such numbers, we're able to use for adult goats to know if we are to add value on manure, how much do we expect given the number of the size of manure we expect at the end of the year and on a regular basis. So those assumptions there are put on this multiplication planning sheet, and then we attach a different cost to indicate the revenue. If we sold at that particular cost, what revenue do we expect? If 90% of the animals have given birth, what revenue do we expect from there? If we have over maybe 40,000 kilograms of manure, or each goat is giving us 138 kilograms of manure each year, if we decided to sell such manure, targeting urban farmers, after using part of the manure, how much revenue we expect from that? So that is also another way of planning and showing you how much you expect at the end of the day if we are selling the animal given the different breeds that I've showed you, how much do we expect. From there on, we put a summary that links these two sheets, from the one that has the cost items, the multiplication items, and the revenue. So we do what we call a summary of profit calculation, like which is the difference based on subtracting the cost from revenue. So what remains is the profit on the minimum. So once the profit is achieved at that point, that's where we comfortably say the farm is break even, the farm is able to self-sustain, and going forward the farm will only be working on the money directly generated from the farm. So this kind of approach, this kind of economics and calculations will help you to make decisions in terms of looking ahead of time what you expect at the minimum. And I mean, because it can go high, I mean, it's depending on if the goats are giving birth to twins, triplets, and which will be a resultant increase into the number of the animals on the farm, number of manure, and so on and so forth. But here it's on the minimum, so it will give you a clear picture, first of all, as I explained, what you need, what costs you need to incur to establish a farm, to also show you how the animals are going to multiply given the different breed lines. It's going also to show you the different considerations we put in place, so that you already know as a farmer those revenue streams that you need to focus on. And then in the end it will give you a summary and a projected revenue and projected profit on the minimum. So it is going to increase better decision making processes, so that you are able to decide on your own on when to expand, when to sell, or when to do so many things. So I want to invite you, come, we do this process together, cost benefit analysis together, the way we have done, the way we did for this farmer here and the other farmers. It is tailored to the context, tailored to a particular farm, particular area. It's not similar to all because of different factors that affect the price and so on. So please engage us. Let us support you to do this cost analysis. And it's going to be a tool that you can use to improve your farm, to make decision, and to benefit from this venture. So we are linking both the technical related items plus the economics to make sure that we are helping farmers build commercial farms and move away from the traditional way of farming. So I want to thank you. Please subscribe to our channel and make sure you engage us to support you in such processes. Thank you so much.